So, if you watched the video before this, we were just talking about our perseverance. But this video is actually about... Okay, so Cole's grandfather died. But when Cole got the news that his grandfather had cancer last year, I don't even remember when he got the news. But
October.
I was going to say, I think it was October. They told him he had his grandfather, like, you have 3 to 6 months to live. Is that what that is? Yeah, like 3 to 6 months to live. And so Cole was like, oh. And Cole's immediate response to that was, I need to make sure he's saved. He's like, I know he knows God, but I need to make sure, like, he knows God. Like, he knows he's going to heaven. And he's like, I'm going to go to Indiana and see him.
Well, my family was planning like they didn't call it the last Christmas, but it was like the last Christmas in January.
Yeah, to spend with him. And so Cole prepared himself, and he went up there, and
Bro, that was rough.
he left after work, and he got up there, and he went on 2 hours of sleep, and then he's like, I'm going to my grandmother's house. And I was like, okay. And he was there for probably like 6 hours, just talking, doing different things, just hanging out, just listening to him. And Cole messages me back, and he says he's going to heaven. He's like, he knows. Like, he's done the prayer. Like, he has a relationship. He knows. Like, he's going to heaven. And I was like, good. You got the answers you needed. Like, you can live at peace. And so this video is just simply, like, I'm one of those people, and there's a lot of people that are like, you shouldn't say that. You want to be a pastor one day. But it's a belief I have. I dislike so much, and I have told him, I'm like, if I pass, you better not do this at my funeral, or like I will come back and raise out of the dead somehow. But I hate when like people get to funerals and they're like, get to heaven so you can see them again. I'm like, this is kind of like a scare tactic. Like, if you want to see this person again, and like these people are mourning, I'm like,
it's not faith. That's not faith. That's fear.
I'm like, who came up with the idea to do salvation prayers at funerals? Because, no offense, salvation is the last thing on my mind at a funeral. But that's none of my business. And so Cole was like, you know, I need to make sure he's in heaven. And so he did. And he went up there and he got the answers he needed. And so when we got the news last Thursday that his grandfather passed, by no means was it easy for Cole to be like, oh, yeah, great, he's in heaven. But Cole was like at more peace than most people that we've seen this past week. Because he was like, I asked the question. I had the faith and I had the courage to go and ask the questions that I needed to ask. And I got my answers. And so this video is just to say, like, if you got some family members and you're like, are you going to heaven? Don't, like, sit there and be like, they ain't going to heaven.
Don't sit there and ask yourself and wonder. Go and find out.
Go and find out. Because the worst thing is, like, I mean, it's not even a bad thing. If they're like, no, you could be like, well, do you want to be? Like, nope. Here, like, let's talk about it. Because ultimately, like, that was one thing. Like, I told Cole, I was like, we found out, I was like, he's in heaven. Like, he's no longer dealing with cancer and the pain, and, like, he can walk. Because when Cole's up there, he's like, he took, like, 5 steps, had to sit down, put on his oxygen mask, and then he'd walk 5 more.
I mean, he smoked, like, 3 packs a day for longer than I've been alive. So, like,
yeah,
the dude was lucky if he got a good breath in.
Yeah. And so I told Cole, I was like that's just peace. And I'm like, that's what we need to be doing with everybody. Like, are you, like, sure that you're going to heaven? Because ultimately that is our one mission on this earth, to get as many people to heaven as possible. And so was that probably easy for Cole? I could just imagine him, because he's an itchy person when it comes to, like, any, like...
If there's a dramatic scene on TV, I'll stop watching the show.
Yeah, he'll be like...
Or not dramatic, I'm sorry, awkward.
He's like, I gotta turn it off. I'm itchy. And I'm like...
watch something else. Yep.
Okay. Or he'll just walk away and be like, you can watch it, just tell me when it's past this scene.
I'll literally hide in the covers on the other side of the bed.
And I'm like, you are a weirdo. But I love him. And so I'm like, I can only imagine, like...
I'm just not a confrontational person.
Yeah. I can only imagine, like, the amount of, like, strength that took for Cole to be like, hey, like, are you saved? Like, are you going to heaven? And, like, I never asked any questions of how the conversation went. When he told me, like, I got my answers, I know he's going to heaven.
You know what he said? I said, do you know where you're going? He was like, he started talking about the hospital he was going to for like chemo or whatever. I was like, no. I was like, do you know where you're going? And he looked at me. He's like, oh yeah. And we started talking about it, but
Yeah.
it's a mess.
It was just, and so no, this is not to say like, hey, if somebody's on their deathbed, be like, are you going to heaven?
If not, you're gonna burn in hell.
Don't use this fear tactics, like he said, because I've been to places where it's like they use a fear tactic, and not just funerals, but just churches, and they're like using a fear tactic to get people saved, and I'm like, oh, but just like your friends, you know them, like family members, hey, you going to heaven? Like, let's have a real deal conversation about it, because the truth is like, yeah, we knew his grandfather was dying, so that's what, you know, made the conversation spark and had the urgency. But it's like, at any moment, anything could happen. Like, we almost died like 6 times on the way to Indiana. Like, it was insane. People just could not drive. And I'm like, and I just, like, I was talking to God about it today when I was vacuuming the pool. Because I was like, yeah, I mentioned this video to Cole, like, right after we got back. And he was like, I'll think about it. And I was like, okay, you do that and get back to me, buddy. And so today I was talking to Cole, and I was like, you know, like, he had that faith to say that. And I was like, but I always want our lives to replicate Jesus. Like, I always want people to be able to say, in Cole and Elizabeth Abbott, I always saw Jesus. And no matter what they did, I seen light. I seen goodness. And I was like, I want our schedules to replicate that, like, Jesus is our number one. And it was so funny because while we were in Indiana, we were there on a Sunday, and the viewing of the body was at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. So I was like, you know, there's no way. And so we watched church online. Like, we sat in his, would they be your aunt and uncle's?
Yeah,
aunt and uncle's backyard and watched church online. And we gave offering and we prayed. And we were like, no matter what, Jesus is going to be the priority of our lives. Like, we wake up in the morning, and the first thing we put our eyes on is the Bible.
And don't misunderstand that for ritual, because it's not. We don't wake up every Sunday and check off a list. It's not something we don't have to be in a building.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what it is. It's about faith, and it's about a relationship.
Yeah. And, like, one reason why I was, like, so urgently to watch church on Sunday, because, yeah, like, I could have been like, oh, no, we can't make a 10 a.m. funeral. Like, we have to be at church. That's, like, kind of a ritual. But I knew, like, what the battle we were about to face with just his passing of his grandfather. I was like, we need Jesus. And I was like, we got to cling to that so fast and so hard. And it was just so... like, hey, and yeah, the first thing we do put our eyes on in the morning is, well, Cole sometimes is a coffee machine, let's be honest.
Look, God made coffee beans with me in mind, okay?
But it's to simply say, like, you get the start of every morning for me. Like, you are the first thing I want in my life, and you are the last thing I'm going to speak to every day. Like, he should be your first love, because honestly, like, when you're in love with somebody, like, they're the person you wake up thinking about, and they're the person you go to sleep thinking about. And if not,
that's a problem.
You need go to marriage counseling.
We'll talk about that later.
Go to marriage counseling. But anyways, so it was just a video of, like, this video is just like, hey, make sure, because, yeah, like, this world is going to come to an end, and it's getting pretty crazy out there. But one day you're going to wake up. And I do not want Cole one day to wake up and be like, is my grandfather in heaven or not? Because that's a daunting question that Cole would have to live with for the rest of his life. Like, hey, do I know? And that's something you don't want to live with. And it's like, hey, when you get to heaven, you know, and I ask myself sometimes, you know, will it matter to us that those people that we love so much weren't there? Like, will that matter? Or will all that vanish and we'll just see heaven? Yeah. Do you have anything to say? I feel like I've done most of it.
I feel like a lot of it, like you just said there, I don't think it'll matter once we get there, but until we're there, it will matter. It'll eat at you, it'll bother you, and it, you know.
Yeah, and like, as much as you, because I heard, like, people be like, oh, I prayed for my kid. Like, as much as you pray for them, your prayer doesn't get them to heaven.
They have to willingly accept Christ.
Like, we can pray as much as we want, like, God, let him in, God, let him in. But if it's like, you know, God said one day he's going to say, who are you? I don't know you. Or he's going to say, welcome home, my good and faithful servant. And then also, it was just like, make God a priority in your life. Like, if you were to, will people, when you go, say, I saw Jesus in them? In everything, I saw Jesus. Oh my gosh. This man just said they probably won't say that about my papa.
Well, he lived an unconventional lifestyle.
Cole Abbott.
You want me to say the truth on here, right?
Give me your Birkenstock.
No.
How to say that in Sam's Club today. Okay, so that's all I have. Anything to say? He's going to say something as soon as his camera turns off.
What?